Hey everyone, and welcome to Primetime Crime. I hope everyone had a great July 4th. I'm Lauren Conlin.
And I'm Jarrett Ferentino.
Right off the bat, Jarrett, you know we have to talk about the verdict in the Karen Read case. We have been all over this. You just discussed this verdict on Dan Abrams the other night. So I want to talk about it. Jury was hung. It was a mistrial. Now, before we get into things, I do want to read to you the DA's press release that they put out following the verdict. This is from the office of Michael Morrissey, and it says, quote, a mistrial has been declared in the matter of the Commonwealth versus Karen Read. Judge Beverly Cannoni set a status conference date of July 22nd, 2024 at 2 p.m. at the Norfolk Superior Court. First, we thank the O'Keefe family for their commitment and dedication in this long process. They maintain sight of the true core of this case to find justice for John O'Keefe. And the big thing here, they end with the Commonwealth intends to retry the case. Thoughts?
Well, we're going to have a sequel. My thoughts are a lot of different things. First of all, the worst thing that can happen as far as a prosecutor and defense lawyer after one of these trials is a mistrial. There's no closure. You just put your best foot forward. You prepped this case for months and months and months. They had 35 days of trial. You left everything on the field. Your playbook is out there. The questions you're going to ask your main witnesses, your strengths, your weaknesses. There are no more secrets between these two sides because everyone gives it their all, only to get a mistrial and have to do it all over again. Even if Karen Read was acquitted, there's some finality in that. The lawyers walk out of the courtroom and they're like, hey, we did the best we could. We understand we had problems with Proctor or this and that. And they accept a jury's.
You mean the prosecutor? Sorry. I'm like looking at it from a defense attorney. Sorry.
Well,
I'm like,
I'm sorry. That's
yeah.
right. So the prosecutor.
Yeah.
So
right.
So you end up in this legal purgatory. It sucks. I mean, it's happened to me a couple of times. It's happened to colleagues of mine. And now you have to find the strength to rebuild your team, get motivated again, do the best you can. And one of the things we were talking about on Dan Abrams, he asked me, he said, how does the prosecution go forward? Number one, get a bio expert, get a biomechanical engineer expert that supports your position. That's number one, because that was a weakness in their case. Trooper Paul, it was, right? That was their, so find where, talk to people. Everybody watched this trial. Where did you see we had weaknesses? And move forward with meeting the strengths of the defense. That's a big issue as far as moving forward. The question of whether or not there's going to be a retrial, there is 100% going to be a retrial. Anybody saying the Commonwealth's going to walk away from this thing doesn't understand the system, okay? Number one, the Commonwealth, whether you like it or not, believes in their case, okay? They believe Karen Read killed John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a police officer. You have a dead cop in Massachusetts. You have a DA with a mistrial, not an acquittal. Some of those jurors bought hook, line, and sinker what the DAs were saying. So much so, they stuck to their guns and that jury hung. Okay? And it's more than one. We don't have the split of the jury, but if you read those articulate, well-written instructions, you will read there's plurals. Some of us feel one way. Some of us feel another. It's not one individual is holding to their guns. And let me tell you this, that means those jurors did their job. Your job as a juror is to obviously respect the opinions of the other jurors, but to stay true to your belief. Consider what's being said. So, look, I saw this mistrial coming from a mile away. I was kind of expecting this. But it's a sad day for everyone involved because you're going to have to go through this again.
Okay, so I'm trying to go back. I should have written down when I wanted to say things when you were speaking. I wanted to let you finish. And I want to point out that to everybody, Jarrett's coming at this from the perspective of a prosecutor. He is coming at this from the side of the prosecution. I believe that the jury wrote that note. I don't think even if there was one person that they would want to indicate that one person. So I don't take that as anything, me personally. I am one of those people who has a hard time believing that they will retry this case. They say they intend to. I intend to not eat carbs all summer, but we all know that that's not going to happen. Additionally, Michael Proctor was just let go or reassigned from the Massachusetts State Police. And this is not due to the disgusting text messages. Yeah, that was terrible behavior. You're gross. But this is due to other things, like the bribes. I mean, he was getting bribes, and although it never happened, we still have this information. And not only that, but again, we've discussed this, other cases are being affected in this. So when you have your lead investigator here that's not looking so good, and I believe it was NBC Boston or Boston 25 that was literally on his front lawn last night asking him questions, asking his wife questions. I mean, they were like, get the F off my lawn. Karen Reed's a murderer. All of these things are not going to bode well for the state. So, and then the last thing is the jury clearly is very similar to the court of public opinion that we see, in the sense that nobody can agree on this and nobody is willing to budge. You've got both sides. She's guilty, she's innocent, and there's very few of us that are willing to be like, oh, that's a good point. Oh, okay, I never thought of it that way. I just see this being a huge waste of time, waste of money. If the O'Keeffes want to do something like file a civil suit against her, maybe a wrongful death suit, why don't you go do that? But I don't think trying her for murder is going to help anybody at this point.
Well, and I think your points are well made. And I, looking at this from having been a prosecutor, I don't want to give the impression that I feel necessarily that they've met their burden and it should have been another
right
way. I don't.
Yeah.
And the issues with Proctor, so how is that going to be played moving forward? He's still the lead investigator in this case. So they're stuck with Proctor. They're stuck with his answers. And he will be on the stand in trial too, unless there's an investigator that did much of what he did and can fill those shoes. However, the defense could call him at that point too, like we were talking about last time. And then it would look like the prosecutors hid him. If he's facing a ton of personnel issues, it sounds like, and he's got a labor hearing coming up. Yeah. So those issues, although the jury may learn he's no longer in that position, he's no longer a trooper, that jury may not learn why in the courtroom, unless it has a direct bearing on Karen Reed or her case. Now, if the federal investigation, in addition to the personnel issues that Proctor is having, we know there is an ongoing federal investigation into these individuals involved in the Reed case. If that investigation bears fruit at any point prior to round two, that could change things. And that's one thing. Let's just say, for example, and this is just a hypothetical, a key witness was charged with perjury. Okay, now you got an almost insurmountable problem. Okay, these are the kinds of things that will make Lally and the DA start to say to themselves, like, we need to re-examine whether or not we could or should move forward. That's the kind of stuff. But again, just knowing what we know now, I think it's important to note, Karen Reed was not acquitted. All right. I've seen cases where there were acquittals. I've seen cases where the DA screwed up so bad the case was tossed before it got to a jury. That's not what happened here. What happened here is the jury could not come to a conclusion, to a reasonable doubt, that Karen Reed committed the killing of John O'Keefe, but damn, they didn't come to the conclusion that she should be acquitted too. So nobody wins here, although it benefits Karen Reed. I'm not suggesting it doesn't, but it's too early to pop the champagne.
Well, okay, so, and let me ask you this, a couple things. Is it possible that they could make it a lesser charge? Because I always thought murder was crazy. She didn't plan that. I mean, that was, so could they say, okay, we're not going to try you for murder, we're going to try you for manslaughter, and that's it?
Yes. Okay. So as they move forward, could they take the top murder charge off the table? As she was, and for our viewers and listeners, originally Karen Reed was not charged with murder. She was charged with a motor vehicle manslaughter type offense until they saw the texts and the fact that she and John had been fighting leading up to it and some of the things that were said. Like, damn, we could be dealing with an intentional murder here. If they pull that charge and go, you're still stuck with, did the car back up, go reverse 24 miles an hour? So it doesn't change what you have to prove, essentially.
You're right.
She didn't unintentionally back over him. You know, it wasn't an accident. Now, did she lie in wait and plan to murder him this way? Kind of a different question. So taking the murder charge off at this point strategically may not make a ton of sense. I could see it both ways. I would say, hey, look, if you believe she accelerated that car 24 miles an hour, hit him, and left him there like a dog to die, then you could, with a straight face, make the murder case, okay? With strong arguments. If you take it off, you're still stuck with having to put all this together, okay? So the argument for that is, hey, you know, they were arguing this was something done in a fit of anger, not necessarily an intentional murder. You know, murders, we know what they look like. Somebody gets stabbed, shot, strangled. This one is unique in that sense. So I could see them. I could see that both sides. I hate to not be responsive on that, but there's certainly good points to be made on both sides.
Now, and again, forgive me if this sounds really stupid, but is it also possible for them to walk in there and then the state to be like, look, if you take, I don't know, agree to 9 months in jail, 10 months in jail for XYZ charge, we won't go to trial again. Do you think that would be a possibility on a lesser?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is it likely? No, because all sides appear to be extremely dug in. Karen Reed, I mean, she's spoken out herself. I mean, they said, we will fight. We will continue to fight. We'll never stop fighting. I mean, so them's fighting words.
You're right.
I mean,
you're right.
Going the distance. So,
okay, good point.
Your question was, is it possible? And the answer is yes, but it's unlikely considering these parties.
Okay, and then the last thing, what about a venue change? Like, this is very close to Canton, to, you know, where everything happened. Is that a bad thing that everybody knows everything? People are going to, if they go to a different venue, will people still be outside protesting? Will they still be so, overzealous about this case? I don't know. And would that seemingly help either side if there is a venue change?
Well, that's a really good question. So here's why I would anticipate a change of venue request. This case got bigger as...
Wait, by who? By who, though?
So I would think the defense could ask for a venue change.
Okay, got it.
Why? Because the case got bigger as time went on. As the trial went on, Karen Reed essentially became a household name. So if they want to ask for a change of venue, they would ask the court to consider the nationwide coverage that this has gotten. And but here's the thing. Most people that are really discussing this case feel very strongly that Karen Reed didn't do it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Is the fact that the case has gotten a lot of exposure, has it resulted in the fact that Karen Reed cannot get a fair and impartial trial? Not unlike Kohlberger, look, this is a worldwide story, okay? So here's the question. So your question was, can they make a request for a change of venue? The answer is absolutely yes. Will they?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to, because the exposure they've gotten has been bad for the prosecution and good for the defense. It's highly unlikely the DAs are going to come in and say, our own county, our own home team can't sit and be fair and impartial. That's a real shot at the people of their county. So you don't necessarily expect or see that. The question you ask prospective jurors in this case is not only, first of all, have you heard of the Karen Reed case? Did you know, do you know that John O'Keefe was a police officer, et cetera? Even if they've heard about it, the question they're then asked is, despite the fact that you know about this case, can you be a fair and impartial juror? And if the answer is yes, I could follow the evidence, I would follow the law, and you find 12 people that see it that way, you're going to be fine. I think this thing's going to be tried in Dedham again.
You do? Okay. And then, sorry, I think I just said that was the last thing. This is the last thing. So it's very well known that Karen Read is most likely doing a documentary or some kind of film with this whole thing. And look, other people probably are too. Turtle Boy, there are people involved in this who have already been signing contracts with documentary companies, blah, blah, blah.
Did the guy who was dressed as a minion get a deal or no?
I should figure out who that is and offer him one myself. God. So do they move forward with this, or do they wait until we figure out what's going on? Because essentially anything that anybody says leading up to this new trial, should this happen, that could be held against them. And I'm thinking maybe that's why Karen Read didn't say anything on the courthouse steps, and her attorneys were like, we have no quit. And she's just like, yeah, whatever. I don't know. I'm just curious about this.
So, all right. So as a person who's been a part of several documentaries at this point,
yeah.
If I'm looking at this, I'm like, hey, we could get 2 seasons out of Karen Read. We could do a documentary on trial 1, leave it in suspense for trial 2, and we get season 2 like Tiger King, right?
Yeah.
So here's the deal, okay? Yes, they can do that. Should they do that? Should Karen Read's lawyers let her continue to talk? She's spoken out. The fact that she'd be talking to a documentary filmmaker is no different than her giving a statement on the steps of the courthouse. All that's fair.
Right.
Anything she says can and will be used against her. Now, she's well represented, okay? Those folks, Yannetti and Jackson, and by the way, on Dan Abrams, I said Yannetti was the DA, and I got flack for it. Like, I don't know the difference between a DA and a defense lawyer. I kind of do, but you try live TV. Sometimes names get jumbled in your head. But
agreed, dude. Agreed. Agreed.
I know the difference, right? So I would imagine a documentary will be made. I've seen it happen.
No, I mean, it will be, but will they have to wait on everything?
No, I mean,
now. You're saying now. Okay.
I think, and then there'll be a second one afterwards. Absolutely. Yeah. No one is held back here. And I see 2 documentaries. I see round 1, it ends in suspense, and there'll be a second season with the second trial. Because I know the second trial, they have a year to retry her. They get the speedy trial. After a mistrial, in Massachusetts, you get an additional year. That doesn't mean you decide on day 364. It means you got to bring her to trial within a year. That's what it means. So there's been some misrepresentations on that rule. So unless the delay is occasioned by the defense or agreed upon by both parties, you got to get this thing in within a year.
But July 22nd, I was under the impression that this is when they start getting things rolling, and when they say, okay, this is our plan, we do plan to retry her, and this is what's going to happen. That's what I gathered, but please.
Yeah, so Judge Bev can set a new trial date, and she likely will on the 22nd. She'll say, Commonwealth, do you intend to proceed on these charges? Officially in court, they're going to say, yes, we do.
Oh, my God.
Judge Bev can say, hey, all right, fine, we're going to trial in November. And set a trial date, and then set these new pretrial deadlines, et cetera. Now, that date isn't written in stone. There could be legitimate issues that delay that date, but she is likely to set a trial date. The other thing she could do is she has that conference just so the Commonwealth could come in and say officially on the record, we are pursuing this, and she could reschedule another pretrial conference in August to kind of manage what to expect there. But I'm telling you that everybody is posturing here, doing a pretty good job of it. So the defense is going to be, we're ready to go whenever you are, Judge, and the prosecution is going to say the same thing. But they better get a biomechanical expert in the meantime.
Well, what if, I know, but what if for some reason, and you think that, part of the huge reasoning in wanting to do this again is because of the O'Keefe family, and to get John justice and to get them justice. But what if the O'Keefe family is like, no, we cannot go through this again? Then what? If you're the prosecutor, Jarrett, what do you do?
Well, their opinion weighs very heavily on a decision like that to move forward. So there's the O'Keefe family, and then there's his family of law enforcement officers. So,
Which we never saw, though. We never saw them in the
and
courtroom. We
that's
never
true.
saw. Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
So you would consider very heavily what the O'Keefe family wants to do, and by all accounts, it seems like they want to go forward. You would consider the fact that the John O'Keefe was a member of the police department. What do they want to do? You're also, and I know this sounds like a bad word, but there's a political component to this. It's like, do we just walk away?
Yeah.
Do we just, so there are a lot of things that factor into that decision, and it's the DA's choice. They have discretion. District attorneys are extremely powerful, and so are their assistants. District attorney and prosecutorial discretion is no joke, and it's really going to come down to his decision.
All right. Well, there you have it. We'll follow this. We'll follow up after July 22nd. But I want to pivot to a case, Jarrett, that hasn't really been discussed too much. Somebody on Twitter pointed this out to me. Legacy pointed it out, and I want to thank her. And then Nancy Grace covered it on her show as well. But it's a really, really important case. There's a missing mom in California. Her name is Nikki Cheng Saelee McCain. I'm going to call her Nikki McCain just to keep it short. She's a mother of 4, and she's about, 4'10", 100 pounds soaking wet. She's a small thing. And in December, her husband essentially almost killed her. He tied her up. He bound her wrist, her ankles. He beat her. He poured water on her. It was a horrible thing. And I have the Shasta County police report right here. And this is outside of Redding, California. So it's it's known for its hiking trails. It's known for some of its casinos that's on tribal land. And Nikki actually worked at the casino that she was found near, or her car was found near. I'm sorry, the Wind River Casino. Her car was found 45 minutes away from the casino on, I believe it was something like May 17th. So Nikki filed the police report. Her husband got arrested in December after this horrible incident. And it was about 8 days after one of his pretrial hearings for this domestic violence case that was going to trial that she disappeared. And so he went out, pled not guilty, and she wasn't there to testify. And now we're at a point where the DA, her name is Stephanie Bridget, and this is the DA of Shasta County, California. She's going to throw this case out by today, actually, by July 5th. So if Nikki doesn't, I don't want to say show up, because I truly believe that she was met with foul play. And the police are keeping this investigation very, very close to home, because we don't know anything. We know where her car was found. We know it was under this weird underpass, sort of, again, in this hilly area, 45 minutes from the casino. We don't have a cell phone. We don't know where the cell phone last pinged. We don't have fingerprints anywhere. We do know the car is somewhat new and it was used, so there could be a lot of different fingerprints on there. We know that husband isn't really talking. He's saying, I don't know where she could be. But her sisters are convinced she did not leave on her own. She would have never done that to her children. She would have made sure her husband was thrown in jail after what he did to her. And the last thing about this is that because she disappeared on this tribal land, they can't necessarily search the entire land. So it's being hindered right now. And so the FBI has to come in, because they're the only ones that can sit there and be like, all right, everybody stand back. We can search whoever we want, and we need to find this woman. So unfortunately, because she's been missing since May and we don't really know much, we don't seem to have any clues. I'm very worried, very worried. But my question,
I think, so go ahead.
Sorry, what's your question? Well, I'll say my question for you is, and I kind of know a little bit of the answer, but in this police report, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, they indicated that they have a recorded interview with her. They have her statement. They have photos. They have evidence, like from things that she brought in that he tied her up with. All of that stuff. They just don't have her as a witness. They don't have her testimony. And I understand that she's entitled to face her abuser, right? That's her right. But right now, what would she want if she's missing and it's not at her own free will that she's missing? Would she want these charges to be thrown out? And if they are thrown out, can they come back if she shows up and she turns up?
Well, so that's a loaded question. So let's back up. You said she has the right to face her abuser. Okay, which she
Sorry,
does.
did I say? I think I might have said accuser by accident, but abuser, yes.
But flip that. So
Okay.
the DA has moved last week to get these charges dismissed, to withdraw these charges, and the judge said, "Hey, I'll give you till July 5th." Okay, if she could be located by then, we could move forward. If not, I will throw the charges out. So here's the situation here. She arrived at a hospital, was brutally beaten, bilateral injuries to her eyes, repeated blows to her head. She was bound. In fact, he tried to choke her. This was a 3-hour abuse episode where he tried to actually tie something around her neck. He poured water on her. She described him as acting just like out of sorts. She didn't know what the fight was over. He locked the back door. So let's say this. Anyone capable of that upon their 4'11", 90-pound wife is capable of damn near anything, okay? Like, in my job, you get a sense, like, I know the killers when I see them, okay? Most of the time. You get a sense. Anybody who can go that far, first of all, anybody who could put their hand on a woman, any man who could put his hand on a woman in a fit of rage is capable of anything. Anyone who can do that for 3 hours to their wife is certainly capable of killing her, hiding her body. Now, he's not been charged with that. I'm only saying it's possible, okay? Here's the other thing, and I am sure this happens in Redding, California, and everywhere across the country. I have had hundreds of cases of domestic violence in my career, hundreds. I have sat with women who have been repeatedly abused by their abuser. I've been in hospital rooms like this, where a woman is black and blue, swollen, crying, has the support of medical staff, and provides a statement, and she's photographed, okay? Several weeks later, we come to court, and don't you know it, what do you think happens? The couple
doesn't want to testify, right?
Wakes up.
Yeah.
And this is an endless cycle of violence. And that's not a judgment. Believe me, I have not been in that situation, but I've certainly seen it, okay? So what has happened is individuals do not want to go forward, or they absent themselves from a jurisdiction, and they avoid subpoenas to come to court. When that has happened in my cases, to the extent that I can, I would bring that person in on the record, and I would say, first of all, I would try to counsel them and say, ultimately he's going to kill you, and it's happened. I've had cases where charges have been withdrawn and a murder has taken place, okay? Very difficult to live with. But you try to counsel that person. You try to get them to the point where they're willing to move forward. But if they aren't, you bring them into court and you say, Judge, I have with me today Miss McCain. I explained to her that absent her testimony under oath in this courtroom, we cannot move forward on these charges. We need her to participate. She's expressed a desire to not move forward. And then the judge engages in a colloquy with her. And these meetings have to happen out of the auspices of the abuser when I meet with them. Now in court, the abuser is standing there. And the cases have been withdrawn. Now, there are some jurisdictions you could take McCain's statement from that hospital bed, which is recorded, the photographs of her injuries, and try to move forward, okay? For whatever reason, in Redding, California, they're not doing that, okay? There are I had a case where a guy beat his girlfriend with a switch from a tree. He used to make her go out into the yard, pick the switch, and then he'd beat her with it. And he was there with his lawyer one day at the hearing, and he's like, no victim, no crime. She doesn't want to go forward. I was like, nah, screw that. I'm going forward. We're going forward. I said,
Good.
With or without her, I'm putting and I said, and I'm going to have your bail revoked today. and the guy ended up pleading
Yeah.
guilty, albeit to a lesser charge. She really
Wait, I love that. I'm like, I have a boner, lady boner from that. Yeah. So that's great. No, really, that's what this chick needs to do. She needs to say, you know what? I mean, I'm sorry. I guess I don't know her caseload in Redding, California, but this seems to be important. This guy seems like a monster. Just saying, move forward, Stephanie. Pull a Jarrett Ferentino here and be like, you know what? And your bail is revoked.
Well, there's things that you could do. Now, the other thing is they may have information. They may have good information that Ms. McCain is deceased, and it's only a matter of time before a case is going to be put together on him. And that may be. Now, here's the other thing. These actions aren't in vain. Like everything she said. I had a case where a victim wrote out a protection from abuse order, and we should talk about this case someday, but she writes out a protection from abuse order saying her husband, or her boyfriend, held a gun to her head and fired it into the couch, okay? A year later, he does the same thing, only this time it's in front of their 3 kids, and he shoots her, kills her in front of the kids, right?
Oh my God.
His defense is, I didn't intend to do it, I blacked out. Well, I then pull out this PFA from a year before. I said, well, did you black out a year before? You did the same thing. Her statement from the grave, like a year prior, comes in. And by the way, I went back into that house and I found that bullet in the floor. But the information, the statement that Ms. McCain gave will find its way if there's an ultimate homicide prosecution. So that doesn't go away. So I'm telling you, this is
super interesting, Jarrett. I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to point out what you said to make sure everybody heard this. And this is a horrible thing to think about. Horrible. But because police have been so tight-lipped on this, and she has been missing for so long, they could be working on a homicide case. And the DA might know about that. And I'm sorry to put that out there. I think it's truly sorry, but
she's saying, what do I want to do? Do I want to go forward, lose a case because I don't have the way? And I apologize. We'll confirm this. There may be a rule in that jurisdiction that, or in California, that says you can't move forward without an actual abuse.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, it is. I mean, basically, it's what evidence do you have? Can you meet your standard? I've been unable to locate that particular rule.
So I agree with you because I also looked that up. I was trying to figure out, statewide why this wouldn't be able to happen, or county, like why, and I couldn't find anything. So I think you make a lot of sense though, and I hate again putting that out there, but
it's entirely possible. And the other things we talk about DA discretion. Okay, DA discretion cuts both ways. She could be looking at this and say, what do I want to do? Do I want to fall flat on my face with McCain here, go on trial and watch him walk out of the courtroom? Or do I want to save this information and use it ultimately if we were to find her and he was responsible? And again, we don't know. We're only reading the tea leaves here because right now he's not charged. We don't know where she is. We don't know if she is. And we certainly don't know what, if anything, he's done. But I've seen it escalate from that kind of violence to murder. He's got all the motive in the world to have her unavailable to testify against him. But if she's found, if her body is found and a case is made against him, that statement could find its way into the ultimate murder prosecution. And
I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
Watching this and saying, no way, that won't find it. Look it up. I did it. Commonwealth versus Buckner. It'll come in. It'll find it.
No, I'm really glad that you pointed this out because a lot of people online, and rightfully so, I completely get it. They're really upset with the DA for kind of threatening this here, but I didn't think about this. Like, and it goes back to the fact that the DA knows what is happening with the police. We don't. The public has no idea. The family has no idea. And again, the family, it's so sucky that when this happens as a family member, you really don't have a right to know, because I guess technically everyone is considered a suspect until you are officially ruled out. And a lot of the time that comes when the person is found or the body is found. So I think this is something that everybody should keep in mind
Yeah, and
while
I don't
they
mean to
follow this
suggest that
case.
she could do what I did in my particular case. I just was, first of all, my victim was not missing. And I was in a little bit different of a situation. And I don't have all the information that this DA has with regard to where McCain could be. So we got to continue to watch this one. It is unfortunate they're not going to move forward, but I don't know.
Well, we don't know. We don't know exactly. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, I will be following this. And man, 4 kids, that's when it really gets me. And that's, we did Kansas Moms last week and we did a live stream, and we will continue to stay on that case. But in that case specifically, that's 6 children. You took the mothers of 2 mothers who combined had 6 children, and now these kids don't have their moms. And that is just so unfair. It's so unfair.
Moves on to their next big true crime story, which we're guilty of that too. But these kids are forever. Their lives are forever changed. So.
Yeah, and my source in Kansas, Oklahoma tells me that the younger children of Veronica Butler are in therapy right now, which I think is amazing. I'm so glad that they are, but they have a long way to go, because in addition to everything that happened, you have to think and remember that they were most likely brainwashed by Granny, by Tiffany Adams, for God knows how long, because she essentially had custody of them. So I can't even imagine what has to be done to reverse all of the trauma and the damage in their little brains.
And, just to start from this, Wrangler and Grandma and the dynamic between the custody situation, that's a tough. These kids had it tough before this trauma. So we'll see.
100%. And, Tiffany has always used her, from what I know from my sources, she's always used her manipulative skills on Wrangler as well, in terms of getting the children. And when this story broke, I had a lot of vibes going on that Wrangler was arrested for this firearm charge, and I don't have proof of this. This is pure speculation, but that Tiffany was the one who turned him in so she could, lay her plan out and he would not be in the way. So that's pure speculation. I don't have proof that she was the one that turned him in, but I have a hunch that
there's definitely documented proof of her keeping the kids from him as well. It's a
definitely.
So
definitely,
if she was turning him in, it was just trying to assert control. So that one's wild, and we're going to continue to talk about that one too.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Well, Jarrett, this has been so awesome. And I'm really excited because for next week, we are going to be in person together in New York. So that'll be a great episode.
Live together in person. So
yes, live together in person. So we'll have a great case to discuss. Actually, I'm not going to say it. It's going to be a surprise. I have a really good idea. So
it's going to be a surprise to me because I don't know what we're talking about.
No, I won't make it a surprise for you. I'll tell you off the air after. I wouldn't do that to you. Imagine I did that to you, like you're a mind reader.
I could be nimble. We'll figure it out.
Actually, you could. You're good like that. But all right, everyone, have a great weekend, and we will see you next week with another episode of Primetime Crime.